Notice before a peony has bloomed, it's pretty much just a tightly wrapped ball of petals. You only see some faint outlines of those petals, so it takes very little painted information to make this look realistic. A peony doesn't bloom all at once, it opens in stages. And so, when thinking about a ball made of petals, imagine that the outside petals start to fall away first. They tend to fall straight out, leaving a ball in the middle. There are different types of varieties of peonies, but typically the outside petals have fairly smooth edges. There's just a wave to the edge. As you get closer to the center, the petals have a more ruffled edge and they're more tightly packed together. They still keep the shape of a ball, it's just that the ball is getting looser. One of the things that I like to do with all of my paintings is pre-mix my colors, and I find that it really helps me in working out the shadows and the middle tones. It just makes the painting go a lot quicker. So I'm using this quinacridone magenta, which is a very transparent color, which means that you will be able to see through it. I'm going to use it in various mixtures of titanium white. So I'm just going to do a little string here. I want one that's fairly dark. Now, titanium white is an opaque paint, so when you add an opaque paint to a transparent paint, you end up with something that's more opaque or less transparent. I decided to use a heavy body titanium white just for that reason, to give it more coverage. And then you can even just kind of pull out of that string and go down to something light. I really want to encourage you with peonies, even if they're white, to not use pure white, or if you do, save it to the very end. I used to use a lot of pure white right out of the tube, and it really made my paintings look amateurish. So if you can, even like with this whitest white, I have just a touch of pink in there, so it just softens it, and it's going to look more natural. You will rarely see in real life pure white. You might see it reflecting off water and that sort of thing. So here we've got our string, and some of you are much braver than I. I like to draw in pencil what I'm going to be doing rather than sketching it out in paint. So first we're going to do our bud, and even though I keep saying it's round, it's slightly oval. So I'm just going to kind of put in that slightly oval bud, and I am looking at where these lines are for the edges of the petal, and you'll notice they're very subtle. They're not razor straight, but they're not real ruffled. There's a slight wave to it, but not a lot. So I'm just going to add in a few of these lines. I don't feel like I have to add in all of them. I'm just trying to give the viewer a feel for what this is. Let your eye see where the edges are by putting a light edge there and a little darker edge for the shadow underneath. So I'm going to use my Rosemary & Company Classic Long Flats, my favorite brush in the world. I'm going to pick up this. So we don't want to use our darkest red, because we want to save that for right here. That would be our pure red. The next darkest is going to be this piece here and this piece here. So we don't want to, that's another advantage of having a string of colors. It helps you see those differences. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that . So I decided this flower needed a leaf around it to make it look a little more believable. So I'm just going to quickly add in a little leaf here. A leaf coming around the side. And then maybe a little leaf peeking around the edge of this. And then of course we need a stem. So here we've got a little quick drawing, but that'll show you what that flower looks like. It's just a ball, and we're just adding some circular motions. You don't have to follow a photograph. You can just kind of make that up. You just want to leave something darker in the center. So let's move to our next photograph where we see that that ball is starting to unravel. We see the longest petals on the outside are starting to fall away, and depending on the variety of peony, some of them fall completely straight out. So let's do a little side view of a peony once it's started to open and the petals are falling away. I want us to keep in mind we still have a ball in the center. If you can keep that in mind, this has always got a ball in the middle of it, and then you've got petals that are falling away. One thing we want to keep in mind is that the outside petals usually are fairly smooth. They'll have a little variation to them, but it's the inside petals that are coming from here where you get that kind of ruffled edge, and you just have a lot of more activity. Be very mindful that these outside edges, they don't have to be exact, but just make sure they look nice and ruffled and irregular. The same thing to keep in mind, this is a ball. Things are coming from the center. So I'm just doing some real loose little ruffles here and there. Since we started this in the pink and white, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the petals are going to be lighter as they come out typically. I mean, look at your reference. Particularly up at the top, any place where they're catching a lot of sun. As they go down to the bottom and they're more in shade, you need to drop down to your next value. There might be one really tucked up under that would have a lot more shadow to it. You can always drop in shadows where you see them. Anytime you can add a little bit of a shadow, it's going to make something look a little more realistic. All right, if you'll notice in the center of this flower, we've still got this dark color coming out. Even though the petals have gotten light, you've still got a darkness in the center. In this peony, if you don't put these real darks in the center and do everything one value, just pink, you're going to really lose the texture and the effect of it. So you've got to have a dark value, you've got to have a middle value, and you've got to have a light value, at least those three values. So I'm going to drop some of this dark right here in the center. I'm going to make sure that I've got a little dark peeking through here and there. Then I'm going to go up to my next value, and I'm just putting these in real loose, real ruffled. I'm just not going to worry about, you know, I'm looking at my reference just to make sure I'm not gone off the rails, but I'm mainly just trying to get some irregular petals with very jagged edges so that your brain will go, oh, that's a peony, that's got a ruffle in it. As we're getting closer to the outside edges, I am dropping down another value so that these edges, and not all the edges are light, some are going to be in the shadow. Don't forget your inside edges. Things aren't light just on this outside. Oops, I got some paint on my brush. So it's not just light out in here. You'll notice there's some places inside this petal where it's catching some light. And again, that's what's going to give it depth. You just got to make sure that you've got some different values. And if you're making them up, that's okay. Drop back down into the dark. You know, the beauty with acrylic is you can always go in and drop in. If you start losing that definition, you can go in and drop in a little more dark to define that again. You may even get to the end of your painting and think, gosh, that just looks a little flat. I'm just dropping in some darker values here and there. The dark values are like the support cast of the highlights. If you don't have the dark values, then you lose your highlights. I'm going to go ahead and put that in and then put some light on top of it. Again, I'm doing some super loose strokes. I'm not dabbing it. I'm not fussing with it. I'm going to go back in and just add. I've got my whitest white on the brush now. I've dropped down into this lightest value, and I'm just going to go in and hit some places. I'm not fussing with it. And I'm trying to let a petal be in front of a petal. You don't want everything being flat. You need some things to come on top of other things in order for it to read correctly. It's nice when you can get something light going across something that's dark. Try to cover my pencil marks up here. Again, I think putting in a stem and some leaves can really help something read correctly. If the stem is up underneath the flower, it should be pretty dark. And then where it's catching the light as it's coming away from that flower, you can lighten that up. You can lighten it up a lot more than that. You might even want to add some foliage to come up underneath this petal. So this area is looking too flat. That's actually multiple petals there. So to fix that, I'm just going to go back in and add some more darks and add some more lights. So there was a petal going this way. I'm going to let this be the shadow coming underneath that petal. I'm going to put a lighter edge where that's catching. This petal is catching some light. There's a petal down here catching. I'm going to just add a little bit more to our ball up here, just to put some short little strokes. Make sure we've got the strokes going in the right direction of the flowers, just keeping that ball. I'm having the same feeling over here that I did here. Even though the value in the photograph of these two is about the same, to make that top petal show up a little bit more, I'm just going to put a little shadow line where that's joining that one. And I might put a little more shadow down at the base of this petal. And then I might put a little lighter highlight as that's catching and as that's catching. Trying to cover up my pencil lines here. Just drop a few more petals in places where I feel like it's gotten a little flat. And there you go. Just in a couple of minutes, this will give you an idea of how to just keep in mind there's a ball, keep in mind there's still a ball, but as the petals are coming away, these petals have smoother edges to them. These petals have a more ruffled edge. After I turned off the camera, I thought I really do need to add some kind of leaf there. And sometimes it's good just to put a leaf going in front of something, just to give you a little more feeling of depth perception. So that's what I did. Sometimes it's difficult to tell how a light flower is really doing against a white canvas, so I often like to drop in a dark background to give it some contrast. And so I just dropped in some burnt umber and sap green, and wow, didn't that help it to pop? Hey, if this video has been helpful, I sure would appreciate it if you'd hit the like and subscribe button. If you want to see more free stuff, check out the links below. I'd love for you to leave comments and any ideas for future videos. Make it a great day.